Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 6th of February, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar. We'll look at currencies, then indices, and last of all, some commodities. So we're seeing here on the dollar, we had this massive jump on Friday on the non-farm payrolls number. And so the dollar has edged higher. Interestingly, we had a target given on the 17th of January, activated just on the 23rd, 24th of January to 106.58. We needed to wait for that breakout, and now we have the breakout. We're now looking to that target. It's going to take a lot longer to be met than was originally forecast, but the interesting thing is we do have that upside target to look at now. And of course, if you're trading the dollar, you want to look at the shorter term charts still. And we're seeing here, we're waiting for this bigger, longer term target to be activated. We need a move above the 107 high, but nonetheless, we are making levels not seen since November, but just starting to break the cloud. So dollar strength is very much order of the day. Euro weakness on the 30th of January. Before those non-farm pay numbers, we had downside targets. We had an upside target and a downside target. We had to resolve that. We're moving back below the cloud, so it's really quite interesting there. If we look at sterling, we see here also we're waiting for this downside target to be activated on dollar strength. We need to move below 120 to activate that. And if we look at this 60-minute chart, there's an absence of targets because we just haven't had the buying thrusts or selling thrusts on that 0.1% unit size. So really quite key there. Looking at equity markets now, looking at the Nasdaq. Really interesting that we had this upside target activated in January, massive upside target. We're still above the cloud on the daily chart. That means we're bullish. Look at these targets all being met. We have a new one. So there's a really big push on the Nasdaq. Very hard to believe, but that's what we're seeing. And then we're seeing here, we've got waiting for this new upside target on the 60-minute chart to be activated. Remember that those targets turn from orange to green when they're activated. So that's really key. And this is an old technique. It's just derived from the point and figure developed over 100 years ago. These targets are decades old. We're just putting them on line-based charts. There's nothing, no rocket science here. And you'll notice this little downside target was given and met. These upside targets given, this one given back on the 17th of January, now met. And we're just waiting for this new one to be activated. See, you really can't ignore the targets. That's on the 60-minute chart. If we look at the FTSE future, we're seeing here, again, we've got this upside target and downside target, a real tussle going on, just not anywhere near as clear as the Nasdaq. And if we look at the DAX in Germany, this upside target given, nearly met, a little mini downside target. So again, a tussle going on. The longer term target given there is also quite key. Looking at some of the other markets, China's been in the news with really big falls. No big surprises there. We had these downside targets in place all the time. So you really just knew that when you see downside targets, especially multiple downside targets, that's not good news for the market. We'll take a look at the energy mix in a minute, but let's have a quick look at gold. So the long-term target on the 60-minute chart, on the daily chart, is up. Remembering the very long-term targets, so this is on the weekly chart, saying that we can see gold at 3,600 by the end of 2026. That's what the target says. So there's a lot of work to do to get there, some 81% rise. And of course, there'll be a lot of thrills and spills along the way. But it's interesting to see that long-term target. But in the short term, the downside target is dominating. We're set to fall back below the 2,000 level. So really quite key. We are watching this daily cloud as well, of course. So that's going to be quite key. And US 10-year yields really affected by Friday's move, suggesting that inflation is, that the US economy is basically still showing a lot of strength, which means that we're seeing interest rates higher for longer. We're back above the cloud here. 4.27% is the target there on 10-year yield. So that's really quite interesting. So if we take a look at the energy mix, we see on Brent crude, we are bullish today. So we're seeing a little upside target there, so that's quite interesting. And don't forget, our morning call reports go out each morning. So if we look at those, you can watch these in Updata or on email. And we can see here we were neutral on crude oil this morning, purely because we had these upside targets and the downside targets. We were waiting for this target to be activated. We were up 0.3% when we wrote that report. We're now up not much different. So we were pretty neutral for the day, with the spectra of downside targets on the 60-minute chart and upside targets on the 1-minute chart. US nat gas was also neutral, not much change there either, just up 0.5%. So it's quite key. We covered coal yesterday on our weekly report. It's not really liquid enough to cover on the daily report, and we still do have all these downside targets on coal. So it's really quite interesting there that we're just seeing all these downward moves and really just continuing down. So still looking pretty negative there for coal. That's on the daily chart and the 60-minute chart as well. Emissions, we do have the backdrop on the daily of downward targets, but we're seeing a real tussle going on the 60-minute chart here. We've got these downward targets, this upside target activated. We're just waiting for this new upside target to be activated. We really need to move above 66 euros. And of course, that's in the report as well. We cover emissions, so we give you all the targets for the day and the coming hours. And you're looking those 1-minute charts. It'll be very interesting to see how they change. This is the 1-minute chart for TTF. That's how it looked when we wrote the report this morning. And if we look at TTF, we see here that we are up this morning, up 1%, but again, a real tussle going on here. With this cloud transition is messy. You've got to watch for new lows or for new highs. That's the key with the trading range, and we give that in the report. So really quite interesting there. And if we look at the 1-minute chart, we had this downside target given yesterday. That was met nearly this morning. And then we had a new upside target, 28.83. That was given at just after 7:30 this morning, activated around 8 o'clock, was just before I wrote the report. So it's actually not in the report because it didn't have that thrust. The thrust was developing, but what's interesting is that we've since had that target, and there'll be more today. And we're just seeing here, 28.83 was the target and that was given at 28.08, and we're now just seeing 28.73. So you really got to watch these targets in real time. That's the real key to them. So last of all, a look at German power, and we're looking here on Icon. This data coming into from Icon. Of course, you could be running Updata on Trayport, on Icon, on Bloomberg, over 30 different data services. So if we look at German power, really quite interesting. We've still got these downward targets, so we really just got to be watching that for the moment. That's going to be really quite key. And again, we covered that in the report this morning. So just keep an eye out there for DE power. We basically were short of targets this morning. We do have these downside targets. It's on EX data. And again, if you're running this on your Trayport data, you'll have slightly better data for the targets. But that's it for today. Remember just to keep an eye on those targets. Watch the reports. Watch the targets in real time. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.